This is KBEV Channel 6 in Beverly Hills. I'm Basia Hoffman, and welcome to Meet and Greet, a half-hour educational informative program taped here in Beverly Hills for the communities of Beverly Hills and Bel Air. Today, we have a guest here that is a licensed clinical psychologist, actually social worker, and his name is Ken Hicks. He also is the author of a book, The 11 Building Blocks of Domestic Violence Prevention. We're going to talk about this book and his career as a licensed clinical social worker. Ken Hicks. Hello, Ken.
Thank you. Hi.
It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here.
Thanks for inviting me.
And you're very welcome. And tell me a little bit about what is a licensed clinical social worker? Let's start off with that for the community's interest,
Okay.
and we'll move on to domestic violence.
Okay, I have a BA degree in sociology, then went to grad school, University of Kentucky, and got a master's degree in social work. Then after the social work degree, came to California and got hours to be a licensed clinical social worker, in which I can do individual therapy, group therapy, and counseling.
So you did group therapy. You mentioned that you liked doing that very much. And then your interest peaked in domestic violence.
Yes.
What exactly happened that pushed you into the direction of wanting to do some informative, educational programs for domestic violence?
The job that I was in, I noticed that there was a lot of people getting out of state prison for corporal injury to a spouse. And it didn't seem to be a lot of programs as far as domestic violence was concerned. And I wanted to do treatment with them. And so I submitted a proposal to our agency, and they said it would be a good idea, and they gave me permission to do it. So I was real interested in domestic violence and group work, and that's how I got into it.
So statistically now, when you come to the amounts of crime, domestic violence, of course, is part of that, in conjunction with alcohol, in conjunction with narcotics and drug abuse, all tied in. What is going on now? Is it becoming more or less in the community, the domestic violence issues?
Well, when there's high notoriety cases, the domestic violence calls increases. When there's not a lot of high notoriety as far as domestic violence is concerned, usually society focuses on something else. After O.J. Simpson, Peterson, and other cases like that, domestic violence calls start to come in a lot because people were more aware of it. And now, these days, a lot of teachers and counselors and therapists were going around to schools, colleges, and also group centers talking to victims and batterers about domestic violence prevention. And that's what I've kind of been interested in and glad to do. Right.
I read your book, and I enjoyed it very much. And I'm going to just go through, if I may, the passages here. It's the 11 building blocks of domestic violence prevention. And so we'll start here with the shower of power. What is the shower of power?
Well, the shower of power is when victims are assaulted or they're in a domestic violence situation, a lot of times the batterer is locked up or put in jail. Giving the victims the shower of power means we're giving them a lot of information and awareness so they don't find themselves in that situation again. We provide medical health services. We provide employment. We provide housing. We provide, all kinds of stuff, GR. We provide things that so they don't feel their self-esteem is so low, so they feel as though they have to go back to the batterer. So we call it the shower of power. We also give them information on protection and safety for themselves and their kids. A lot of times, victims are not aware of the services that are provided for them. So we try to give them an awareness so they don't feel as though, hey, listen, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any money or any of these kind of things. And I find myself back with the batterer again. So we call it the shower of power. When you feel as though you have power, then you can make good decisions and hopefully you can become safe and also you can provide protection and safety for your children.
Now, we're just going to take, let's suppose, hypothetically, that it is the female that's victimized. I know that there are males that are victimized as well.
Yes.
But let's say it's a female that's victimized in a household.
Yes.
And she calls in order to be part of the program or to have the various agencies refer to her that she can use.
Yes.
And the batterer or the perpetrator
would
then go into, is it a court-assigned program, or how do they volunteer to go in or volunteer to come out? How does that work?
Well, it's two different things. A lot of times when, first of all, let me give you some statistics. 90% of all domestic violence is never reported. and the domestic violence that is reported, 95% of that is never prosecuted. So a lot of times if a victim calls in the police and the police come and the perpetrator or batterer is arrested, the court possibly will mandate him to do a 52-week batterers program. At that point, referrals are made for the victim to get into victims group, to get into counseling, to do everything they can to provide her and her children with services so she's not battered again.
Okay, and then you have a non-violence treatment plan. How does that work?
The non-violence treatment plan, I came up with the 11 building blocks of domestic violence prevention, in which dealing with batterers, I felt as though different techniques and things could be used, and they were used successful to have them stop battering, and also when the victim reads the book, she can see the warning signs and to keep her and her family safe.
Okay, so what would be some of the warning signs that you would see and that you can inform the community?
One of the warning signs is a person is on drugs and alcohol. Usually a person that's doing drugs and alcohol finds his wife and his family as a target as far as his domestic violence is concerned. His violence, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and then it goes to a higher level with physical abuse and also sexual abuse. So we kind of explain what the abuses are. A lot of times domestic violence isn't just leaving bruises. It starts off with emotional abuse. It starts off with verbal abuse, and then it escalates to a higher level of control.
Right. And in families, I would suppose that the role models are then reenact at the level of violence again, begets violence, until someone really breaks out and gets help.
Yes, and a lot of times it takes that where a person might be seriously injured or a child might be seriously injured until the police are called, and then the police intervene, and now this person, the batterer, has to get treatment, and we suggest that the victim also get treatment also.
So the victim would be more in a group therapy session where there's a support group and they're going in the right direction with other people that have the same similar issues, and the perpetrator is the one that's actually getting the treatment and the steps in order to continue on forward and hopefully make a breakthrough and not suffer the violence again.
Yes, a lot of times when the victim goes to a victim's group, she can see that she's not alone. She can see that other people have these kind of problems and have been involved in domestic violence, and she can see that there's a way out, that they've made it outside of that, and there is help. And that helps a whole lot as far as not feeling isolated and feel as though that nobody knows what's going on and that you're all by yourself.
Yes, because I would think that the victim feels powerless and then by doing this empowers themselves and has options. And once you have options, therefore you have a sense of empowerment.
That's where the shower of power comes, like you mentioned. Once she gets those resources, then she feels as though, listen, I can find myself my own housing. I have a job. I can get medical, expenses paid. I can help my child, and I don't have to go back to this person that keeps battering me. Absolutely.
Great. And then I'm going to go my glasses.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go with the batterers. I found this interesting that you had said the batterers should notify new significant others of their violence and abuse. The batterers.
Yes.
How honest are they when they go into a new relationship?
Well, that was one of the group rules, in which, as far as batterers is concerned, I know they don't like to tell anybody, but a lot of times a potential victim, if a batterer comes and tells them the truth about his life, they might say, "Oh, this person is being truthful. Let me give him a chance." We always say, and through treatment with the batterers, give the person an opportunity to decide if they want to stay in this relationship or not get in this relationship, or to give you a chance. And when we first started off with the group, the batterers in the group said, "No, we're going to wait the whole 52 weeks. We're never going to have a girlfriend. We're never going to tell them we're batterers." But after a while, one person jumped the line and went over and said, "Hey, listen, I would like to let the group know that I have a new girlfriend and I want to invite her to the Shower Power orientation group." The rest of the group members said, "What? You mean you got a girlfriend?" And he said, "Yes, I was honest with her." And a lot of times if you're honest with somebody, you tell a person, "Hey, listen, I'm a batterer. I have a history of battering, but I'm in treatment and I'm doing everything I can not to batter again." That victim will feel, listen, this person is telling me the truth. Mm-hmm. Maybe let me give him a shot at possibly a relationship. And that's kind of how that works. Yeah.
Ken, I'm curious something, because usually self-esteem and self-worth has a lot to do with the person's attitude. Obviously, if they're going to be violent, if they're lower self-esteem, lower self-worth, more violence. So in the treatment programs, I imagine that you address the self-esteem, self-worth issues.
Well, what we do, and one of the building blocks, is that the batterer cannot go back home or get back into a relationship or see that victim again until he completes the 52-week program. A lot of times when the victim is separated from the batterer and the batterer is separated from the victim, they can get treatment and services which will build their self-esteem. And a lot of times the victim, after building her self-esteem, she feels as though, hey, listen, I don't have to deal with a person like this. I don't have to have a person treat me like that. So building their self-esteem separately is what the treatment plan is, and it usually works. And a lot of times if the victim doesn't get treatment and the batterer gets treatment, the batterer sometimes does not want to return home because he doesn't want to return back home where the victim is in the same situation or where she was when he left. So in our group, we say, listen, we try to give the victim services and the batterer services separately so they can both build their self-esteem. And after they both build their self-esteem and after the 252 weeks, then they can either one make a decision whether they want to get back together again.
So it's 52 weeks. You separate them. They have a chance to grow. They have a chance to mend and heal. Actually, how many times is the victim based in fear? Because I imagine to be constantly harassed, abused, creates a fear element within the household, and fear to go to authorities, fear to seek help. In those cases, what do you do?
Well, as far as if the person is on parole, a lot of times on probation, he has a no contact, which means he cannot contact that victim until he completes the 52-week program. And also we recommend to the victim that they go to groups. So, of course, she's afraid. She's by herself. She might have friends or his friends or relatives threatening her, but we're saying it's a no contact at this point. So now we've taken the decision of her seeing him out of her hands and said, listen, he's not going to see you till after he successfully completes the program. So we're going to provide you with these services to help you build your self-esteem, and so you can make a decision later on after you find yourself a job, new housing, able to care for your kids. You might not want to go back there with him again. So it was very, very successful.
Is there a restraining order or anything of that nature that is issued prior? You say no contact. Well, you can verbally say no contact. Is there any legal way that can be handled like a restraining order, or is that unusual?
If he's on parole, then it's a no contact, and it's a special condition of his parole that if he contacts her in any way, he goes back to jail.
Okay.
But definitely, we do recommend that the victim put in for a restraining order. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we're going back now. You have here the steps.
Yes.
But we're gonna go forward.
Okay.
Okay, here. It obviously drugs and alcohol. We discussed that. That heightens the violence there. So there are specific groups like AA and ACA. Describe those and explain how that would work.
Okay. AA is Alcoholics Anonymous, CA is Cocaine Anonymous, and NA is Narcotics Anonymous. And a lot of time, a batterer uses these type of drugs, and he uses his target and the children for his violence. And so that's one of the warning signs if you have in a relationship and the person is doing drugs or alcohol, and they have a violent temper, and they possibly are using a lot of violence. We're saying if you're dealing with somebody or you're in a relationship with somebody who's using drugs, you need to get out of that relationship, because that is definitely a warning sign. And they have to attend meetings, I think maybe once, twice, or 3 times a week until they complete the 52 weeks of the batterers program. And then there's an aftercare with AA, CA, and NA. And hopefully through the process of being in a group, he'll constantly and continuously go to the AA meetings, get a sponsor, CA meetings, and AA meetings, and become clean and sober.
Okay, and then there's random drug tests as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And required drug tests.
Yes, so he doesn't know when he's going to be tested or why he's going to be tested. Well, he knows why, but he doesn't know when. So we try to catch them off guard.
And then in your book that I read, you have the 4 R's. Can you explain what the 4 R's are?
The 4 R's is, number 1, responsibility. During the group with batterers, number 1, they have to take responsibility for their violence. No matter what the victim did, they have to take responsibility. The second one is repair, in which they have to repair the way they think and the way they act towards other people. The other one is remorse.
I'm going to interrupt you one moment. The second one, do they make amends? Is that the part where they are starting to make amends? Or does it come a little bit later?
Well, it's through the process, through the 52 weeks. Sometimes we're saying repair by amends could be that in which they're sorry for what they did, and they start to repair how they act towards not only the victim, but other people in general.
Okay, let's go back to the 3rd R. I thought that might tie in with the 2nd R, but it didn't. So let's go to the 3rd R.
3rd R, and through the process, that's remorse. They're sorry for what they did. They're sorry for putting the children through violence and observing those kind of things. They become to be sorry for what went on, and so that's the remorse. And the fourth one is righteousness, in which they have to obey the law, they have to obey some higher power, they have to take those 4 R's. And usually it takes about 52 weeks for them to do or complete the 4 R's.
Okay.
And it's kind of heavy.
All right. Okay. So you have the 4 R's that you yourself explained here. And then getting back together. What is the likelihood of someone who has been battered and beaten and goes back and gets battered and beaten? Because there is a sicklier something that happens in the program sometimes where you get off track, you fall back, and you go back into battery. What is the likelihood, and statistically, what is the results of people that go back and stay together without violence?
Okay. It's not very high. We call it breaking the cycle of violence. And breaking the cycle of violence is having the batterer go through a 52-week program with no contact and have the victim get into a victims group and also get counseling. And then they can both, after they build their self-esteem, decide, do I want to try this relationship again? But if I don't want to try it, I feel so good about myself, I'll be able to meet somebody that might, see me as getting in a relationship with. So both people, and I've noticed when I do my groups, the batterer, at the end of the 52 weeks, and it takes time, sometimes they get back together, sometimes they don't. A lot of times, I call it the batterer's relapse prevention program, in which after they finish the 52 weeks and get back with their wife or their family, they can continue maybe once every month or after the first 6 months and continue going to a batterer's group on their own, because these type of problems sometimes continue going on. They might be arguing and kind of rehashing old things. But if he goes to a batterer's relapse prevention program, hopefully he'll still use the techniques to not batter or be violent in the household.
So there's always a linkage to going back to group or having support.
Yes.
On the other hand, too, it would be very difficult, I would think, the triggers that happen, and you're certainly a clinical licensed social worker, so you would know this, but the effects that emotionally and psychologically of bringing two people together that had a past of violence, and they trigger in each other sometimes that dance or movement that becomes uncontrollable. Do you have any feedback on that, of what has happened in the group?
Well, when we're doing group, we kind of go over what some of the trigger things, and it could be a argument, it could be finances, it could be stress with the kids and things like that. But we teach our batterers that they have to take a time out, which means they can leave for about an hour to go out, but they have to return. And they would tell the victim, and the victim would learn these type of a timeout thing. So instead of her possibly saying, I don't want you to leave, she'll understand that what the timeout method is that he might leave for an hour, but he's going to come back. And there's some things that people can talk about and be able to talk about it without any hostility and violence, but there's some things that always triggers things, and sometimes you have to have an arbitrator or middle person to talk about some of those things.
Well, you're certainly giving them cognitive behavioral skills. You're reinforcing their coping skills.
Yes.
And the way to interact peacefully between each other that would be more constructive for the family unit.
Yes.
Now, there are children involved in some of these households. How do the children fare, and what happens there? Are there programs for the children as well or not?
Oh, absolutely. Well, number one is when we talk to the victim, we want to get a safety and protection plan for the children. A lot of times we call it the code of family silence. Nobody gives their kids a place of safety. If a fight breaks out, usually the kids want to get in between the victim and the batterer, and a lot of times the kids or the children get hurt. So we want to talk to the victim about when these type of things happen. Can he go to his room? Can he call 911? Can he go next door to a neighbor, or she go next to a neighbor? So we want to give them a safety plan. But usually the statistics say that a batterer usually comes from a very violent family. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times victims, we say, this research says that a young teenager, usually coming from a violent family, he's usually very aggressive. But the female is a lot of times very submissive. And when teachers see children in their classroom that exhibiting these kind of behaviors, I think that might be a warning sign that they might have to have some type of counseling or talk to them about what's going on in the household.
So if someone was watching today and they're in an abusive situation in a family setting, let's say, and what are the steps that a teenager would take?
We suggest that the teenager, maybe if he's going to school, talk to a counselor, maybe talk to a relative, maybe talk to a close friend about it, as far as safety is concerned, about what's going on at the household. A lot of times, parents won't give their kids a 911, say, call us anytime you see something's going on. So a lot of times they kind of keep it to themselves. But family members, we're trying to make people very aware of some of the warning signs. A kid could be very depressed, doesn't want to talk, cries all the time, very submissive. So we try to go around to victims, victim programs, batterers programs, talk to families, talk to the PTA, go to high schools, go to elementary schools, and tell them some of the warning signs so they feel, hey, listen, I'm aware of this. I need to tell somebody.
Mm-hmm. And I would also think that you have programs that go directly to the schools to make awareness.
Absolutely. I think there's a assembly bill that they're supposed to possibly the teachers are supposed to get educated and become aware of the domestic violence and also teen dating, and also talk with the children about what domestic violence is. A lot of times we say domestic violence, but it's a big realm. It's emotional abuse, it's psychological abuse, it's sexual abuse, it's physical abuse, it's a lot of things. And many times when even name calling, it starts at that. Usually if a person keeps calling your name constantly over and over, you start to become that name. So that's kind of heavy.
Okay, now you travel in many different cities, you present the programs, you have the book you've written, you self-published the book as well. It's doing very well, by the way. You've received numerous awards. I understand you're receiving another award very shortly, aren't you?
Yes, I graduated from the University of Kentucky School of Social Work, and they're inducting me into their Social Work Hall of Fame, and that's going to be coming up in May, so I'm so excited about that.
And I'm glad. I'm very pleased for you, and I'm sure you're going to have many more awards coming. There's also something that fascinated me when we talked, was that you are involved with groups of, well, it was the gang members, I guess, that you brought together in the inner city and had them have a way of venting their anger, but in a productive way through sports.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I came up with a proposal which was last summer, and what we wanted to do, we wanted to get peace officers from all the 5 protection agencies, Highway Patrol, Deputy Sheriffs, LAPD, probation officers, and also parole agents, along with some of the street ball celebrities. They have to do the slam dunks and everything, and get together and put them on a team. And we went to some of the high crime areas throughout LA County and had the gang members play with us. At halftime, we provided them and their families with educational services, employment, and also health benefits. And to kind of get a hook there to bring them in to see that, hey, listen, these peace officers are not just coming to take mom and dad away all the time, but they're giving us some services and also some programs to help us. There's an option rather than just being in gang violence. And we helped reduce gang violence last summer, and it was very popular. Yes.
And you've done that for several years now. And are you continuing to do it? Is that your plan?
That was a kind of a pilot project last year, and we're trying to go to another level now. You know, as far as gang violence is concerned, we probably hear and read the newspapers and hear on the news that there's a lot of things going on. So we want to continue providing educational services, employment, also health services. If a person has those basic necessities, hopefully he'll stop being involved in gang violence and crime.
So your personal direction, what is Ken's passion? What direction do you want to take this program and the books? What is your dream?
I just enjoy doing lectures and helping victims. I enjoy helping batterers to stop battering. I like to help get families back together. I like kids to be aware of what domestic violence is so they can get help. And that seems to, you know, make me feel real good about myself, and it builds my self-esteem also when I can help somebody else.
And were you a victim yourself at one time? I know this is a hard question,
No problem.
and so I needed to ask that. Was there anybody in your family, or were you personally involved at any time in your life with anything of battery or violence?
No, grew up in New York in a single family, my mom and my sister and my brother. And no, I just kind of got into the domestic violence thing because I enjoyed, you know, doing groups. And once I saw that they weren't getting a lot of treatment, or batterers were going back with their family with no treatment, I said, I enjoy doing groups. Let me try to work with these guys. And was successful in that. And now I go around doing lectures, which I enjoy doing and helping people. Yes, absolutely.
How many people come up to you after your lectures and get your workbook? Your workbook is always with you as well. And I haven't had a chance to read the workbook.
Yes.
I did read the book, and it was really, really great. By the way, at the end, there will be an email that people can reach you at, where they can you can provide them information of how you get the book. You wrote the book, but you self-published, so it never did get to Barnes & Nobles, but it can be purchased through you. Is that right?
Yes, they can email me, and I can send it out to them. A lot of times when I go into the prisons or the county jails, and provide lectures to the women, also the men. They don't have money to pay for books, so I donate most of the books that I get to them, and they read it. And a lot of times, even students in high school and college don't have the money, so I usually a lot of times just donate the books to them so they can start reading that, and also family members.
And is there a way of people donating to the domestic violence program? And in what way would that be?
Well, if they email me and they want to make a donation for books, I can send them books, so they could send and make a donation. And when I go to the victims groups, when I go to talk with family members, when I go to students, I'll just give them books.
I think it's so great that you're doing. Are you going to be planning? How long did it take you to write this book? I know you might be planning for the next one to come. This has been very successful. But how long did it take you from the idea to actually writing it and then to having it a finished product, self-published?
Probably a year and a half to 2 years. I think I got involved with other things, and then you kind of have a block and you don't want to write. Then you get an urge going and you just feel like writing the whole time. So about a year and a half to 2 years.
I think that's fantastic. What you've done, and the awareness is certainly great. And in Ken Hicks' life, I know you're a father.
Yes.
I know you're doing your therapy work
Yes.
as well, the domestic violence. Is there anything else that you have a passion for? Music, I would think, is one. Just to get another side of you, you do a lot of different sounding and for all kinds of groups and whatever. You put together CDs, and I think that's really great. You want to talk about that too, that your passion is also a little bit of music?
Oh, I love music, the oldies. I like the oldies and the doo-wops and things like that. I like kind of making tapes and hearing those and let my friends listen to them. I think that we never know where we're going to end up. And this domestic violence prevention is, I think, where God put me, and I just enjoy doing it. And I have a lot of energy to continue helping victims and children and families, and hopefully they get back together. So I think, I'm so happy that I was able to help people.
I am so delighted that you were on the show. And next book, next awards, I'd like to have you back and you share with the community again. It was really nice to have you. So here we come to an end of Meet and Greet. I'm Basia Hoffman. Feel free to call us at any time at 310-282-1444 to have any of your comments. Thank you so much for your support. And again, we'll see you next week on Meet and Greet. Have a wonderful day. Bye.